From San Antonio, Texas, home of the Alamo, the Riverwalk, and the World Heritage San Antonio Missions, this is the Exit Planning Coach podcast with John F. Dini. Designed to help advisors who work with business owners, John talks with top professionals in the exit planning field about best practices, marketing tips, and how to be more effective when working with owners. Now, here's John F. Dini.
Hi there, and welcome back to the Exit Planning Coach podcast, the only podcast by advisors for advisors. This is intended to be for professionals in the industry. And my guest today is Mark Ahern, who is the founder and president of AMP Business Valuations. As you might guess, a valuation firm, but they also do value growth advisory, and they're dedicated to the small business community. Mark is a CVA, a SEPA, and he's an affiliate finance faculty member at Regis University in Denver, which is a Jesuit university. So I've always respected the academics of the Jesuits. They're like serious learning people. My best friend in high school went to a Jesuit university. I went to a public university. Big difference. Mark got his bachelor's from the University of St. Francis and his MBA from DePaul. And prior to AMP, you spent 10 years in commercial lending with firms such as GE Capital and Wells Fargo. I mentioned Regis is in Denver, so is Mark. And they also have members of his team in Chicago and Central Washington. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks, John.
Thank you for coming on today. What led you to decide on exit planning as a service you wanted to offer business owners?
Yeah, so it ended up being a natural fit. So as you mentioned, I have a valuation firm, and that kind of came out of my passion and desire to continue working with small business owners in a new way other than banking. And the more valuation work we did, the more we saw that there was a need for the exit planning services. Owners kept leaving value on the table, and we're not maximizing their potential. So we felt we could make a difference as a team, and we started to explore ways where we could add value in an exit planning way. And so we don't broker the businesses, so we call it value growth, but it's basically exit planning that doesn't have to lead to an exit per se.
Sure. Yeah, one of my axioms that I tell owners all the time is exit planning is merely business strategic planning with a target date. So, and how long has it been since you added exit planning to your valuation practice?
Yeah, about 4 years. I think we finally came up with a formula that works for us within the last year or two, where we can, better articulate what it is what value we provide and the service that we provide. I think that can often be the tricky part. But yeah, I've been working with business owners for about 13 years total, and then been working in this new capacity about 4 years.
Okay. And, not to throw you a curve, but, we do the National Exit Planner Survey. And thanks to our programmers, I can cross-reference who answers what, right? And the valuation people are always the lowest in expectations of continuing work from a client. They're very transactional typically. Do you come to most of your clients, or most of the clients come to you for valuation first or for planning first?
Yes. So you bring up a good point. As I kind of think about the health of my firm, right? The valuation is very transactional. It's, one and done. So exit planning allows us more of a recurring component to our business. And I found that through valuation, we generate a lot of leads because we're talking about those things. I could be doing, maybe I'm doing some valuation work for someone who just acquired this business, and I can, through conversation, talk about, how many years are you going to put into it? What's your end game? And that's just a very natural tie-in to just starting a value growth engagement.
Now, do you also do evaluation for everybody that you're doing an exit planning engagement for?
Yes. Yeah. So we call it our baseline valuation. So we need to know where we're starting from, and there's a lot of great tools available for advisors of even if you don't have that valuation background, but we have that process buttoned up. So by performing that baseline valuation, we have a really good sense of where the business is at. Meanwhile, we'll have some discovery, interviews talking about personal and financial goals in conjunction with that discovery process, and then we can put together that prioritized action plan and really get going from there.
Now, we haven't had a lot of valuation guys on the podcast to date. And there's always, you talk about a baseline valuation, which, is not, I don't believe it's an official term in the industry. But people talk about certified valuations. They talk about opinions of value. They talk about estimates of value. What is a baseline valuation?
Yeah, so all our valuation work is certified. We come up with a conclusion of value. So it's something that a business owner could take with them anywhere they go. So we look at market multiples, of course, which are pretty common and prevalent, but we heavily rely on the discounted cash flow, the income approach, because
Sure.
I believe that the multiples are great, but they're, it's almost like trying to play darts blindfolded, especially
Yeah.
in the small business community where the data isn't as great and prevalent or accurate. So we take a look at the business, work with them to create some projections and then discount there based on their growth rate and level of risk.
Yeah. Yeah. You talk about the information. There's not to cast aspersions, but there's a database that I used to utilize, and it would make me nuts because whenever I tried to look at things, it was all data that was reported by business brokers. And so you know which one I'm talking about. And and they always had one in there where an unprofitable company or a minimally profitable company sold for 73 times earnings, and they just averaged it in with everything else. And it's like, no,
Yeah.
that's not valid.
Yeah, I wish, I wish in those cases that there was a little bit more information telling you like maybe there was something about that business that was truly remarkable. But yeah, and absent that, it's really hard to rely on that data for for something as important as evaluation.
Yeah. Yeah. You throw it out. Um, well, as we're talking about valuations, because as I said, we haven't had many valuation guys on to date. Um, I knew this like kind of, when you have knowledge, but you've never personally experienced it. And I ran into an owner a couple of years ago that had had a valuation done for his company for inheritance tax purposes. And I couldn't figure out how the heck he thought his company was worth what he said it was worth. Um, and he's like, I've got this appraisal and it's by an ASA certified valuation guy, and he says it's worth this much. And I'm going, but it's not worth that much. That's like 12 times earnings. And you're not going to get that in the open market. And eventually found out that his dad had left a number of insurance policies, whole life policies in the company that
Okay.
had huge cash values. And he was really upset when I told him that his company wasn't worth that much. He felt a little better when I told him that the assumption was he'd get to take all those policies with him. So it kind of evened out. But just quickly, an overview of the different types of valuations that a, a an exit planner might run into that would throw him off on how that company was valued.
Yeah. So there's a few common reasons why valuation work comes up. My firm is predominantly focused in the M&A market, but gift and estate tax, divorce, litigation, Those are all specialties that a lot of firms will kind of pick and choose one. The audience is different, right? So if you're preparing a valuation report for gift and estate purposes, you're assuming that the IRS or potentially a court is going to be reading your report, and versus maybe for M&A purposes, it's really a business owner. So you might rely more on financial analysis and education in that report, whereas a gift and estate, you're kind of throwing everything out there, doing several methods, shoring up your language as far as like how case law and precedent has gone back 60 years, to really solidify and defend your valuation. So that's why a lot of valuation firms will specialize in one area or another.
When do you have the conversation about value enhancement with a valuation client? I understand your discovery process and why that would be synergistic. Is it all through your discovery process, or is it after you present them with a valuation and say, you can do something about this? It doesn't have to be as crappy as this shows.
Yeah, it typically after we're able to dig in and do the valuation and really immerse ourselves in the financials. And then I really like the term, and I think it's come up a few times, in the podcast and in the exit planning community, but the value gap or the wealth gap, and that's really a way where you can say, okay, the value of your business is here, but if you're just at the industry average as far as maybe a multiple of earnings, you could be a little higher or somewhere else, and that's a way where you can kind of take what can be a very complicated topic and boil it down into a way where anyone can understand. And then you can dive deeper then and say, by doing these things, this area is an area for opportunity, and by simply implementing these processes, you might be able to get there. And then it also, of course, the value enhancement depends on how much time you have to work with the owner prior to exit.
Sure. Do you do that? How do I phrase this? Do you do that generically? Your company could be worth substantially more. Or I know a lot of people like to put a target on it. You've got a $6 million company. It could be a $9.8 million company if you listen to me.
I think it's hard to, we certainly don't make any promises, but I think just by saying, if your margins are well below average and then showing them what average looks like, I think that's a very attainable goal. And then you can go above and beyond that. And then, then we haven't even talked about, the risk component or, adding recurring revenue, like a lot of businesses, right? If you had a maintenance or service contracts into your business, you'll have private equity pay up for something like that. So there's a lot that can be done within the business, and it may not even have anything to do with growing revenue.
Right. Okay, we're going to take a 1-minute break here so that we can pay for the podcast, and then I'd like to come back and talk to you about your engagements and your clients, if you don't mind. Mark Ahern from AMP Valuations and Business Valuations, and we'll be back in just a minute.
How would your practice survive if only 25% of your clients were happy with your work? How many referrals would you get? Would you advertise that success rate? Over the last decade, both the Exit Planning Institute and PwC have surveyed owners and found that 75% were profoundly unhappy a year after their exits. In 10 years, the exit planning industry has done little to fix this issue. Business owners need purpose, direction, and activity after exiting. Planning for that starts with your very first coaching conversation. We work with advisors who believe that clients should be happy after exiting. Exit Map is a structured discovery process that helps you have deeper conversations about client options, objectives, and life after the business. We help you launch better transitions. Take a test drive at exitmap.com.
Welcome back. to the Exit Planning Coach podcast. My guest today is Mark Ahern, the founder and president of AMP Business Valuations in Denver. And Mark, one of the reasons people come on the podcast is to expose their services to other people in the industry. We all know it's a team effort. Could you give us your contact information before we go any further? We'll have it, obviously, we'll have it when we post it, but just in case somebody's listening in the car or something.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the easiest ways to get a hold of me is through LinkedIn. So Mark Ahern, Ahern. You'll find me there. And then my email is mark@ampbusinessvaluations.com.
Great. Thank you, sir. So what is your ideal client relationship? What does it really, when you're doing evaluation for somebody, what makes it click? What makes you say, this is somebody that I would like to go forward and do more work with?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's anyone that really wants to improve themselves and is willing to listen, right? If it doesn't make sense for us to be working together if we spend all this time and money coming up with this action plan and then nothing really comes from it, or the owner isn't quite taking action. But I think a lot of times the best engagements are those when you can develop that rapport with somebody where maybe you grew up in the same place or you have something in common, and it really kind of generates that authentic relationship, and helps you position yourself as the most trusted advisor amongst potential team. So those are the best relationships for us.
Yeah, that's always our objective in the exit map. Our definition of the most trusted advisor is the client calls you even when he knows it's not your area of expertise.
Yep, exactly.
What's the biggest challenge you have in exit planning?
I think the biggest challenge, and many other advisors probably agree, are just finding the clients. The data tells us that there's a tremendous need for these services, but business owners are great at not being found. And
Yeah.
as an owner, I can attest to that because I wake up every day to 5 spam emails for services I don't need, or offers to be in some magazine for some service we don't even offer. And so we're really good at clicking delete when we see anything that we're not familiar with. So finding the clients is tough. We generally, referral sources, of course, are great. Since we work closely with business brokers and SBA lenders in the small business world, brokers can often be a great source of referrals where maybe they encounter a prospect that is thinking about selling but not quite ready. The broker kicks it over to us. We can grow that relationship, grow the value of that business, send it back, and then the broker has more to sell. But some brokers offer that exit planning service as well. So it's really a case by case basis, depending on the brokerage firm. But yeah, finding the clients can be tough. But we're working on. We really lead with educational content, really putting ourselves out there, putting information out there that maybe business owners can relate to, and then they explore further, maybe find us on our website, something like that. But I found, I can go to exit planning events and be in a room with 20 other advisors doing the same thing, all looking for the same referrals. So the referral game could be tough and challenging, but I think if we can crack the code and going directly to the client, I think we'll be able to build our business based on that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and certainly, we've all found out that it's kind of like selling funeral pre-planning. They take the same attitude towards it. Yeah, that's a really good thing, and I probably should do that.
Right.
Yeah,
That's a good way to sum it
not
up.
today. Who is your best referral source? You mentioned business brokers. We know again from the national survey that the number one source of referrals is another professional. So what professionals do you find refer to you most often?
Yeah, business brokers and financial advisors. financial advisors is a very interesting one because, even upon getting my CPA credentials through the Exit Planning Institute, I've had other financial advisors proactively reach out and say, hey, I have my CPA credentials as well, but either I don't have the time to kind of perform the service of an exit planner as I thought, or maybe my firm doesn't really allow me to serve in that capacity, but I would love to team up. And so again, that's a win-win scenario with financial advisors where, if there's a business owner client that's looking at a liquidity event, the more value that or net proceeds the business owner gets out of the business, the more assets the financial advisor has to manage. So
Sure.
So that's a win-win scenario as well.
What would be your advice? I mean, we're an exploding industry, as you know. And as you said earlier, the data shows that, there's a desperate need. I mean, I haven't seen, we're in the middle of conducting the survey now, but in the first 3 years, a large majority said they're getting more leads and more work than ever, as not only the boomers exit, but we've also seen the studies where the Gen Xers and even Gen Y are thinking about exiting much earlier. They don't want to work until they fall over like a boomer does. Um, I'll be the poster child for that problem. So, what would be your advice to somebody that says, boy, it looks like there's a lot of opportunity in exit planning. Maybe I'll do something about this.
Yeah, I think it's being clear about what it is that you're able to offer. I think everybody's got a little different twist or a little different flavor to their exit planning process. And so I think those that are the most successful exit planners are the ones that are able to better articulate what it is that that the service is, right? It's hard. You're basically promising to an owner that, hey, pay me now for something you're going to benefit in the future, and not a lot of owners can get on board with that. You're also promising, maybe for us it's value enhancement, and I think a lot of people when they hear that are probably skeptical. They'll be like, what do you mean? I've spent 20 years in the business. What do you mean you can come in here and tell me quickly that there's ways to grow that value that I haven't already thought of? So it's, I think, being clear about what it is that you're able to do, educating your COIs. Like, it's nice to have referral sources, but if they're not even clear on what it is that you do or how you're going to engage with their relationships, they're less likely to send those relationships to you. So that's something that we spend a lot of time as a team working on, just refining, how we talk about our services, how we would charge for our services, just so we can have that elevator pitch and potentially generate some referrals out of that.
Yeah, good point. Good point. I was a business broker for years. That's how I wound up in exit planning, coming from that side of the fence. And you know, people would ask me all the time, offhand, well, you're a business broker. What should I do to get the most money for my company when I sell it? And my answer was always what you should be doing every single day anyway.
Right.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, when I'd interview prospective listing clients, when you're doing this, when you're doing the SIM, when you're doing the information memorandum, you always want to tell a buyer what they could do with the business, why this would be a good opportunity for you. And the funny thing is, where I got that information? From the seller.
Right.
I would just say, if you were buying your business, what would you do to grow it? And they always have, a dozen ideas that they never implemented. Oh, I could bring in this product line. I could go this territory. I could, get these people, and it's like, well, why didn't you do it? Well, no, I don't have the time. I'm running the company.
Yeah. There's a lot of instances where sellers may try to have their cake and eat it too, as
Yeah.
they say.
Yeah.
I saw and worked with the business commercial HVAC company that had add backs for a cattle business within their P&L, or at least that's what the SIM said. I asked some questions and I wasn't able to get some great answers through evaluation engagement. So, talk about opportunities to grow value in your company. It's really try to pull back on those commingled expenses and really invest in some quality financial reporting, and
Yeah.
that will go far.
Yeah. Yeah. Just having financials sometimes would be a good thing.
Yes.
All right. Appreciate your time, Mark. It's been a pleasure talking to you. As we go forward and we get into more topic-based stuff, I want to call on you as a resource and see if we can come back and talk again. Mark at AMP Business Valuations with an S
Yes, with an S.
.com. Okay.
Yes.
And certainly if you are a financial planner in Denver, I know there's a few of them that is in need of evaluation, but then would like to see the proceeds of that liquidity event grow. I would advise that Mark is probably a good guy to call.
Yeah. Well, thanks, John. Really appreciate your time, and thanks for having me on. This was great.
Okay, thanks a lot, Mark.